Welcome back to the Walking with Jaguars podcast. Today I'm talking to my good friend Brett. Brett is a serial entrepreneur. He's a Bitcoin. He is an ayahuasca drinker. He's a financial whiz and someone I just really enjoy hanging out with. And also someone who I've seen an incredible evolution over the span of our friendship, which is always really fun. Is there any other hats or labels you like giving yourself?
Mm, just a curious human. Um, yeah, that would be probably the biggest trait that I latch onto is just a curiosity for how the world works and how all the dots connect. I've always been someone that's been hyper curious to try and figure out the fabric of everything and what it all.
Yeah, 100%. I would say we're cut from the similar cloth on that front, just the endless pursuit of curiosity.
Yeah, yeah, that's why we have so many good conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Across so many different topics too. It's like we go wide, which is nice. And free diver. I'm gonna throw that in there too.
Yeah, yeah, freediving, spearfishing. That's been a super fun pastime for the past few years. Teaches you a lot about yourself and your fear and uh, anxieties and everything. A lot of shit comes up when you're 20 meters under the ocean on a single breath hold in the dark, cold waters of the Pacific Northwest. Yeah, show you a little bit about what your mind's made of.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so usually I kind of dive into plant medicines and spiritual growth with people right away, and I feel like we can get to that. But I really just want to dive super deep into Bitcoin with you because I've touched on it in the podcast, but I haven't really gone deep, and I feel like you're the perfect person to lay a nice foundation, uh, for this incredible signal of walking a life of purpose and meaning and truth. So maybe let's just start with a bit of your background surrounding financial literacy and anything else that you think was poignant in building the foundation to actually get a grasp of what this absolute beast black hole of Bitcoin is.
Yeah, that's a great, great question. So I've always been someone who thinks a lot about money. Like ever since I was a kid, I was just like trying to make money in different ways. Understanding, I think, from a young age that if you have money, you have more options and freedom. So that was always a big thing to me. And I remember working on budgets and I really liked math. So I was always writing stuff down. And when I would get a little bit of money, I would write it down in a little book. So I knew exactly how much money I had. And then I could watch it grow and increase the number, knowing that I was going to turn that into something someday. Right. And I was going to exchange that energy that I had stored for something that I wanted. And so that led into when I was starting my working years. I started working right out of college, dropped out of college, and just went right into the workforce. Um, and once I started to make a little bit of money, there was that problem of okay, what do I do with the extra shit? Right? It's I got this much to pay in rent. I got this much for food. I live a pretty minimalist lifestyle. What do I do with this extra money? And then that took me down the rabbit hole of finance, which I think can be a bit of a trap to really understanding money as energy. And I can circle back to that. But going down the finance rabbit hole is you go into learning about stocks, dividends, your TFSA, your RRSP. How do you manage all your different government registered accounts and move the money efficiently around to have different tax benefits? And so I learned that whole world. I spent 15 years figuring out everything I could about that world, did some trading, found that trading kind of triggered a lot of my degenerate gambling habits. So had to walk away from that, which has only been a few years out. And that is a tough habit to break once you realize that most of what goes on in the financial world is just yeah, degenerate gambling and everybody just trying to play within this fiat Ponzi scheme. But learn that whole world. And This is the interesting thing about getting into Bitcoin and understanding what money is and money as time and energy in abstracted form, which I think is a Jack Mahler's quote. It's probably like one of my favorite things about money, like time and energy in abstracted form. That's very disconnected from like the traditional finance fiat world. It's never talked about. You never think about money at the base layer. And so for 15 years, I'd been training my mind to like play the game, play the like vibrational game of like moving money back and forth. Not really understanding what money is though. Like not even questioning the source of truth of like what game am I even playing? What is the foundation? What is this built on? Uh, and then you get into Bitcoin, and that's like one of the first things that comes up is just like, okay, what to understand Bitcoin, you have to understand what money is, what is money. And then all of the first principle, you know, people within Bitcoin that operate on that base first principle layer of talking about what money is, you get into the whole philosophical rabbit hole of just like, holy shit, I've never this thing that I've been trying to accumulate because I think it's going to give me freedom and time and all this stuff in my life, and I'll be happy and I'll feel secure. I haven't even questioned what the base layer is. And then you realize there's a massive psyop within the traditional financial system that's designed to have you never question what the base layer is. Because when you do, you start to see that the base layer is like created at infinitum out of nothing. And it will always be that way. And so once people start to realize that, too many questions come up. And then people start to like disconnect from the system, right? So I think it's intentional that people don't talk about what money is in the traditional financial world.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really it, right? And I did a podcast with this guy who was like a Bitcoiner, and we ended up just basically talking about plant medicines, but like the Bitcoin baseline is just a nice one, you know? And that's really it, right? It's like what are we doing? What is this thing called money? Because if someone can just print it infinitely, then like why am I working so hard to like get this thing?
Exactly.
It almost seems ridiculous, you know? And it's one of those things where you kind of need a perspective to even look at the whole like fiat system. And that's where like Bitcoin, like it gives you a platform to stand on to actually witness what's going on. Otherwise, you're just a fish in water, right? You can't actually even see what's right in front of you. And what's I find super interesting about the Bitcoin signal and the people who like consider themselves Bitcoiners is they have this moment, and like in the space, it's called like the orange pill moment, right? And it's like very similar to like the awakening of spirit, but it's created through this thing called Bitcoin. So I'm curious, like, what was like your orange pill moment?
Hmm. It's tough to say because when I think of moments like, like a fraction of a second, right? Like it just happens as a moment in time. Where for me, it was this like 1 year patch of time that was like extremely confronting. And I was just listening to 10 to 20 hours of podcasts a week, reading the Bitcoin Standard. I got like Principles of Economics here, which is an Austrian economics book, learning about like the history of money. I'm just like reading all this stuff that I've never really thought about before. And it was so confronting because of those 15 years I talked about learning the traditional finance system. And it's like, this can't all be bullshit. And so like you want to hang on to it, right? Where I'm like that's like the sunk cost fallacy. It's like I've put so much time into figuring out how to like work this system and like make this game work for me. It can't be built on a fucking lie. Like, please don't be built on a fucking lie. And so that's why I would say it was like a 6 month, a year long kind of process. But you're right that there is like a switch that kind of goes off, and I'm trying to think of when that switch was. But I think for me, I would say this is like a pretty big switch was living here in Canada. And then I think 2022, the trucker convoy that went on. And that was a big moment for Bitcoin. So a bunch of people were actually like sending money to the protesters. through fiat, and then a bunch of bank accounts got shut down, and a bunch of people that were like loosely tied to the protest that might have just like been there started having their bank accounts shut down. And I remember watching it all through like, the decentralized media web and like different people reporting on it. And I was just like, wait a minute. If they can just like shut your bank account down and all money, all Canadian dollars are digital now anyways, then like you don't own this shit. And so, like, I think the alloidial title moment for me was like, okay, if I don't own that, then like, what can I really own? And then you go on like the real estate, like thinking about real estate. Can you own real estate? Maybe, kind of. We have fee simple in Canada, which means like basically as long as you pay your property taxes back to the government, then like you have the rights to your land, but you got to keep paying that fee, right? You got to keep paying your mortgage. You can pay off your mortgage completely. That's nearly impossible to do because the valuations are so high here. So it's like, good luck doing that in your life. So you're paying your mortgage interest, you're paying your taxes back to the government. Do you really own your land? I don't know. And so it's like, okay, I can have gold bars. Like, that's cool. But what if I want to go down to Central America? I can't take my gold bars with me. Like, you can't have passing those through an airport, right? So it's like, cool, I can own that gold. I can put it in a safe. That's something that I can own. Basically, throw out all the digital stuff because we just went over that of just like, your digital accounts can be seized. So there's no real alloidial title or ownership there. And then what are you left with? It's like you're left with this magic internet money that we've been learning about, right? And the alloidial title that's like built into the foundation of Bitcoin. Like it's right there in the white paper. It's like, this is really something that you can own, you control, hold your keys, and they're yours. And so that was, I think, like that moment for me to just be like, I've gone through the thought process of like, what can I actually own that is very hard to take away from me? And the only thing that I can still see, and I come back to this all the time when I'm thinking about money and wealth and life and everything, it seems to be Bitcoin is the only thing. I don't see anything else. Correct me if I'm wrong.
For sure. No, and I agree, and I've definitely come to that same place because like you were saying, it's like, all the real estate, all the stocks, all the investments, even like private equity and companies to some degree, it's all built on the fiat system. So it's kind of this house of cards. And gold really is the only thing that's kind of lasted the test of time that you can really own. But then to own it, you need to have vaults and probably guns and all this stuff. And even if we look at like the US back in like the early 1900s, they just like banned people having gold, you know? So even then it's like, man, it's like it's tricky to actually like secure your wealth. And just talking about orange pill moments, I remember mine, there was like two that really were like fundamental. And the first one was when I started first getting into Bitcoin in like 2017, and I was understanding like what the blockchain technology was. And then something clicked, and I was like, oh, this thing's gonna change the world, you know? And I was like telling my parents, and I was like, this is the thing, you know? And obviously, I very quickly got trapped in the shitcoin gamble thing, you know? And it's kind of a rite of passage to some degree. But I remember going out and like laying on my lawn, just looking up at the clouds and almost having a psychedelic visionary experience, being like, everything's going to change. But the thing that, and then like the market crashed, right? Right after that. And I was like, okay, I understand roughly what this thing is. And I understand that it's going to change the game. And I understand that to some degree, it's to put $1 into Bitcoin is to short the entire economic system that's currently in process. But I was like, this thing's going to take forever to come to the surface because the US is just so strong, yada, yada, yada. And so I kind of went on the back burner and sort of like, okay, I don't really know. I think this is the thing, but it's not time. And then I was in Canada and COVID all kicked off. And I just realized like the US just printed like 20% of its entire money supply in the span of a year. And I was like, oh, the time is actually now, like right now. And then that's when it was just so hardcore, you know, it's just like 8, 10 hours a day of podcasts. Just like I need to garner all this information because if I don't have it, I'm dead.
Yeah, and the second that you you leave that, like you leave that bubble that you're creating of, like, learning about money as energy, Bitcoin, learning about, like, the faults of the system. You have to understand what the problem of the traditional system is to even understand Bitcoin has value. So that's, like, a huge task. And like you really have to insulate yourself within that bubble because the second that you stop taking in that information and you just like go out in the real world and just talk to someone who has like a fucking job at an insurance company, like the whole thing shatters because you're like back into the matrix and everybody, and then like Bitcoin comes up and people are just like, everyone's just like shitting on it. Or you talk about like, you know, like you just said, the Federal Reserve printing $6 trillion and how much that devalued the currency. You bring that shit up to like normal everyday people, and they look at you with like eyes crossed, like you're fucking crazy. And so you're like, wait, am I fucking crazy? Like it's really easy to just start to question yourself as like crazy when you leave that like insulated place and start to talk to people that like have not done any of that like proof of work within their own thought process to question things and understand like what's bigger going on here, like why does everything keep getting more expensive? Why do prices always go up, right? Most people just think prices are going up. It's like, well, what if the dollar is going down? And they're like, huh? Like, what do you mean? And it's like, oh yeah, it's a bit of a mind fuck, but you got to like go and do the work to understand that that's actually what's happening.
Huh, yeah. And even just going back to like the philosophical side of what do you actually own? It's really interesting because my understanding now, to some degree, is the Lakota. They say the only thing you actually own is your flesh. You know, like you don't own the natural resources, you don't own the land. To some degree, you just own your flesh. But I would now add to that and Bitcoin.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So you touched on it, and I think it's a super important piece of the whole puzzle. So, how has Bitcoin changed your understanding and perspective of energy?
Okay, how has Bitcoin changed my understanding perspective of energy? I'm just going to hold on to that for a second because I wanted to ask you a question about what you've learned from the Lakota. So, have you shared that with someone like that's Lakota to say like you can actually own your flesh and Bitcoin?
I haven't. I have.
Okay. I would be really interested to hear because I have a feeling from like the indigenous perspective that they'd be like, "You fucking idiot!" Like I think they would just like it'd be like this guy like right away he like kind of got it. You can understand your flesh, but then he starts talking about money again.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And it's a tricky thing because also to understand Bitcoin, especially to like a real depth, you know, you have to understand like how money works, how cultures have been built and like fell over the span of history, why certain monies have worked like gold and why other ones haven't. And then also, if you're really going into it, it's like how energy works and how energy markets work and how all these resources come together, you know? And it's a really intense understanding from a very wide span of things. You know, it's not just finance, it's also physics to some degree. And it's like philosophy and culture and history. And it's a very hard thing to explain to people. And that's where I see like as Bitcoin has more adoption over time, it will really come down to UX UI of working with the network. And lots of people will start holding Bitcoin and start using Bitcoin, but they won't understand Bitcoin. And there's only a very select few people who will be like the mechanic who I understand how the car works. Everyone drives, but I actually understand the car. And that's, I feel like, what we kind of are. We're in that position of the mechanic to some degree.
Yeah, or at least trying to be. Man, like, there's the mechanics, but then there's also the physicists and the engineers, and they operate on whole different levels of understanding, right? So, um, I think to aspire to be a mechanic is like a pretty great thing. Like I don't know how my fucking car works. I can change a tire, I can change the oil, like, but like, you open the hood and you look at the engine and you're like, this is a bunch of wild shit going on here. Like if there's a noise coming from this thing, like I don't really know. So to aspire to be, yeah, on the mechanic level is even lofty at that, right? Like it's hard to understand how things work in the real world. Um, and so um, just thinking back to your question there about Bitcoin and energy. What was it again?
Yeah, just like how has your understanding of energy changed and time?
Yeah, never time. Fuck. Time has changed a lot. Um, Time gets very weird when you start thinking in block height on like a fixed issuance schedule that runs till the year 2140. Time gets very different, right? Um, but I'll start with energy because energy has been an interesting one. I never thought about energy. I guess I did a little bit. I did electrical 1 year of electrical engineering. So, you have to think about like logic circuits and like you watch electricity move through a circuit and you add resistors and capacitors and you can like measure the output. So, but that's more of like, you're kind of just running calculations, not really thinking about how energy operates, like even within a human as like an electrical being, right? Like everything we do, we are needing to consume energy. And then like I have to go and eat and like the sun, you know, grew food and the energy was taken from the sun into the food. And then I take that energy and I use it to go about my day. And then I go and I do something that's valuable for society. I get rewarded with currency, Canadian currency. That is a energy unit, but it's a terrible energy unit, right? Because it is operating on this base layer that can be constantly manipulated and devalued and have the energy stolen out from under it. So when I have my $100 Canadian bill, I can't see the theft of energy leaking out of that $100 bill, but I know it's happening. And I know that now. And I see that as like the energy leak within the fiat system. And when you start to think about like, okay, now that I understand that we are operating on this like leaky foundation where there's just like energy spewing out all over the place. Like you can think of it of just like looking at a battery that's like got a bunch of holes in it and it's just like spewing shit all over the place. And even though people are trying to charge the battery, and you're just like watching it like just and you're like, this battery is gonna be dead in a couple hours. Like no matter how much people put energy into it, like it's gonna die. And there's nothing we can do about it. And so that's the way I feel about the fiat world now is like it will have to die eventually the way that things are built because it's so leaky and there's just energy going everywhere. But then when you expand out and you think about like how people operate within their day-to-day lives, like they're the only answer from operating within like a leaky energy system is like pure chaos and anxiety and stress because you cannot figure out where your energy leaks are because they're fucking everywhere, right? Because the base layer that you're trying to operate on is just like a sinking ship. And so if you're on that ship and you are staying on that ship, it's going to go down and there's nothing you can do about it, right? Because like you are not a controller of that system. You do not understand. You do not have the rights to create money out of nothing like the people that control it do. And so you're not on the inside game. And there's a pretty big chance that the people have already left that ship who control it. And like we're just all on it and it's going down and like the captain's gone, you know? I honestly believe that at this point. I think the captain's like long gone and like a bunch of people are still on it and you got to look at the ship and understand like I don't have the skills or the resources to patch these holes. It's time to leave and get on a different lifeboat. And that's Bitcoin, right? That's Bitcoin. And then Bitcoin is the understanding of energy that is in a system that doesn't leak. Um, so you can just talk about like the scarcity. I love talking about this with some of my friends who like come at me and tell me they don't want to be in Bitcoin because it's too volatile. And the volatility, in my opinion, within Bitcoin is because it is measured in the unit of account of fiat currency. And that is the volatile network, right? So fiat is chaos, fiat is volatile. There's degenerate gambling, there's manipulation, there's theft just going on everywhere, rampantly all the time. And so when you look at the price of Bitcoin, it's just like going crazy because it's this perfect energy network on a fixed scarce amount, right? And so if you flip that on its head and you're like, okay, I'm going to stop thinking about the unit of account of Bitcoin of being like $100,000 US, and you just think, I own a percentage of this network, right? So as I get energy into my life and I want to store it long term, there's 21 million units of this currency energy network. And let's say I get to one. It's like, okay, I can measure my percentage of that network, one divided into 21 million. And then I get to 1.1 and I can measure my increasing percentage of that network. And so everything starts to look super stable, right? As long as you don't look at the fiat price, because that is the chaos of the fiat world. That's the volatile world. This network is actually unbelievably stable when you look at it from that standpoint. And then there's this like calm and peace to be like, oh, I know that if I just keep providing value to society, taking my excess energy, putting it into this network, I can just watch my percentage of the energy network grow at this nice, steady pace that's calm and relaxed and just like will always be there. And so then that changes time. Like now you're into like thinking about time on a different scale where you're like, okay, I can actually plan for the future because I can look at the Bitcoin source code and see that, you know, the mining issuance schedule of new coins coming out. It's a very laid out plan. There's a halving every 4 years, and that will go to the year 2140. And I can verify, I can run my own Bitcoin node and see that like there's no double spending going on. And you just understand that like, oh, this is a nice, like peaceful, secure, where like there's rules within the system and all the people that are using the system like uphold those rules and we all agree on those rules and no one can change them. So then that makes you think a little bit more long term about, okay, now I'm not trying to like outrun the real estate market or like outrun the stock market or figure out if Nvidia is going to beat Tesla or yada yada yada. What if Elon goes fucking crazy like all the headlines out there, right? You stop thinking about all that stuff and you're just like, okay, scarce secure energy network, increase my percentage of the network, and now time stretches way out and you can think 20 years, 40 years, 100 years. And then like what comes out of that, waking up every day being like, oh, I have way more time than I think. How do I want to spend my time?
Yeah. And just for the people listening who don't know a whole lot about Bitcoin, I feel like there's a few pieces here that you've touched on that I could provide clarity to. Where the first one is we talk about fiat, right? And like, what is fiat? Fiat literally means by arbitrary decree. So it has value because we say so, right? And that's what we're currently working on a global level. And when you talk about the exchange between people, like how we relate to each other and how we be in relation to each other, money is a huge piece of that. Like I work for you, you work for me, I pay you, you pay me, whatever it may be, right? But if the actual thing that we're using to make that communication, which is the money, is inflating at 5, 10% a year, it's like I'm handing you a pile of sand and it's slipping through your fingers as you're grabbing it. And then what happens between us is like you feel hard done by, you know? And then I feel hard done by that everyone's doing that to me. And it creates this weird tension in the way that we relate to each other because we all know, even if it's subconscious, that like I'm getting fucked by you giving me dollars.
Yeah. And you're incentivized to fuck each other, right? Like you just touched on there. So within my small business through the pandemic, one thing we went through, like when inflation really started to rip in 2021, all of our costs went up, right? So our cost to purchase beeswax, our cost to purchase fabric, um, our cost for staff, we had to give everybody a raise because like their cost of living were rising, groceries were going up. And so now I've got all these rising costs within my business because of the inflationary aspect of fiat money. The only way for me to survive as a business owner is to then shuffle those extra costs off onto my customer, right? Because the customers are the ones that give you the money. So it's like, well, the people that have been supporting me that I care about, that I want to provide good value to, I actually have to take more of their money now. to solve this problem. Right? And there's only so much I can reduce my salary within a business as well, because I did that when times got tough. I'm like, okay, well, I'll just pay myself less money. But then that's a bit of a trap too, because you're just like, well, you can only cut your own salary so much within a business where it just doesn't make sense to run the business anymore. And then you're just going to shut it down. And then nobody has a job. So you're like, well, I don't want to do that. And you just get caught in this fiat trap of like the sand slipping through everyone's hands and how everyone's just trying to pass the buck to someone else. They're like, it's like a fucking hot potato game, right? Where you're just like, nobody can figure out, but like everybody's just trying not to get fucked. And they're just like, well, no, hey, you get fucked. And then like, but I know you're my partner and like, I know we've worked together for a long time and you've been a great supplier, but like, I gotta like spread some of this getting fucked onto you. And like, there's nothing you can do about it. And then we're like, we're all in this together. And it's like, why are we all in this together getting fucked on this thing that like none of us created, none of us would vote for, none of us would like agree to be on this system that is just like eroding foundation from underneath us. Like none of us signed up for this shit. And we didn't, and we don't have to be here. We don't have to operate in this.
For sure. Everyone feels like they're getting fucked. It's like the customer, there's you as the business owner, and the supply chain that allows the business to work. Everyone is getting fucked. And it's no one's fault within those relationships. It's literally like the government printing and debasing the dollar, you know? And I think for people as well, like it's hard to see to some degree. It's like hidden one layer behind where you look into your bank account and the number doesn't change, but the purchasing power does. And people look at gold like a good investment, and gold doesn't do anything, right? It just holds its value because of its scarcity. And you see the price of gold going up, and you're like, oh, wow, gold's a great investment. It's like, no, gold is like to some degree anti inflationary. That's it.
It's just a shiny rock that just sits there.
Yeah. And that's why it was used for the longest period of time, is that the actual supply of gold in the world was so scarce, and Bitcoin being a perfect 21 million, it it is literally the invention of absolute scarcity. I feel like that's what it was more than anything else. And now we have the entire world's population competing over the 21 million coins. We've never had anything that was absolutely scarce.
Right. Verifiably scarce, I would say, right? So, and that's where when you measure Bitcoin and gold together, um, we know that if you're going to, like, if you want to just go find your own gold, um, good luck for one thing. you know, you're going to go and sift in a river and like maybe find a few little sparkles of gold, and that's great. But that's going to take you a lot of energy. Like you're going to have to drive out to the middle of nowhere, right? Camp out, have all your like food and resources out there, and like, and if you want to go into a larger operation, well, you need like gold mining equipment, right? So even more energy to get that gold. So that is where gold has the value, because it's very energy intensive to mine. But within the verifiable scarcity is where that starts to break down, because if something is a physical object, it can be centralized, and it will be centralized by whoever has the most control and power. So, like, we don't know how much gold there is in the world. We actually have no idea, right? It's just like everyone's best guess. And like, but there's a ton of gold in the world that hasn't been mined yet, right? It's just not financially feasible for people to go and get that gold yet at the current price that gold is trading at. But once gold hits 5,000, 6,000, $10,000 an ounce, all of a sudden, like going to the Arctic, to that spot that's like super remote that would cost millions or $1 billion to get to, financially, it might make sense. Like there will be some entrepreneur that's like got a spreadsheet that's like, when gold hits $12,000, I'm going here. Because like it will make sense for me to go and get it. And then all this new supply comes onto the market that people didn't even know existed. So like that's the gold that's in the ground problem scarcity. But then it's like, well, how much gold do the central banks own? How much gold do, you know, the G8 countries, like the top countries in the world, like how much do they own? You just ask them and they just tell you. And you're like, can you verify that? And they're like, no, 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 we don't do that.
Can we see Fort Knox?
Into that. Yeah, can we go into that vault? And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, sure, you guys can come on in," and then they never do it. So that gets back to I can kinda tie this into a fun little bow of, like, what is money at a base layer. And, someone that's really a great speaker on this would be Lynn Alden. I would highly recommend her book, Broken Money. She actually doesn't even talk about Bitcoin until, like, 80% of the way through the book. It's just, like, talking about money and, like, our current financial system and what money is. And she's like, money is just a ledger. And you want that ledger to be as perfect and incorruptible as possible. And so it's just like total units of currency of this money. Here's the total. And it goes from this person to this person. And then in this one goes from this person to this person. And you just want an incorruptible ledger. And if you have a perfect incorruptible ledger, then you have good money. And that's like all it is. So you can think of money on like a micro scale if it was in like a really small community as just being like this nice little spreadsheet that everyone agreed upon. And like it honestly doesn't even need to be something that changes hands if it was like 100 people. Right? You go back to like the rye stones um, that they talk about in uh, Bitcoin Standard, and like they were just these massive stones that just like sat in like one wide open field. And it was like, okay, they would go over and they'd be like, now you have ownership of that big stone and you're going to transfer it to like Jim over here. And now Jim has ownership of that big stone, but he's not like taking the stone back to his house. They just all agreed that like, no, these are the most valuable, scarce things. And we were all agreeing of like who owns which big, valuable, scarce thing. And they're really hard to steal because they're so big you can't move them. So like theft is impossible. And so, like, money is just a ledger, and you just want verifiable trust and to have no one be able to like take over that ledger and just like put their own information in it or change the transactions around. And as long as you can avoid that, then you have good money.
Mhm. Yeah, this is kind of just like a total side idea, but I'm currently reading a book about Crazy Horse, who was a Lakota leader back when the whites were basically just killing all of them in the US. And
Is this the book you told me about when we were on the trip in Boston?
no, I only just started reading it. That was Black Elk Speaks, which is about a Lakota medicine man, which is just badass. Like it's cool. Yeah. But Crazy Horse, and they're telling this story of like the whites come in and they find like an area that's rich in gold, and they just start going crazy for it. And they're just watching from this perspective, being like, these people are fighting over this yellow shiny stone and they're like dying for it, and it doesn't actually do anything. And they were like the chiefs were like all talking amongst each other, like maybe it's like a rare white person medicine. And to some degree, it's like we've just put value on it because it's scarce, and that's it. It doesn't actually really do anything. I mean, you can kind of use it in like electrical circuits and whatnot to some degree, but it's just hilarious the perspective that they had on all these whites just going fucking nuts over this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so okay, so like when you start finding Bitcoin, and it almost it's as much an unlearning process as a learning process to understand this thing. I'm curious how your relationship with like fear and uncertainty and then also hope has changed since finding the Bitcoin signal.
Man, fear. I would say, okay, so I think the biggest thing that I battled with up until understanding money as energy and Bitcoin was just like this almost like what's the word? Not a little bit of nihilism, but apathy would be the good word, right? Because you're like, I know something's wrong. There's this anxiety. I feel like I can't get ahead. No matter how hard I work, it just seems like things are just kind of like moving away from me. And it creates this apathetic state where which is the opposite of hope, right? If you're apathetic, then like you have no hope because you just don't think that things are ever going to work out for you as a person. Um, and so like at least I know the problem now, you know? And it's like, that's a big one, and I'm not that far into it. I think I really only figured out the problem a couple years ago, you know? Really understood it of like, oh, you know, money is corrupted, and everything that we base our life and our foundation and measure it on is a corrupted foundation, which is jarring because you're just like, holy shit, like this is wild. Um, it's like, so that makes the apathy go down a little bit, right? Because you're like, oh, the world's fucked. And everything that like the way that things operate is like super corrupted. And like I always had a feeling it was corrupted, and that's why I was so anxious. But like now I understand it. Now I know. And then, that creates other whole other host of problems. And so I think a lot of my friends that are into Bitcoin now, we struggle with is like the noise of the world, right? Like, because everybody's always talking about price going up, price going down. U.S. government did this, U.S. government did that. This is bad for Bitcoin. Oh, Bitcoin's like dropped down 40%. And so when you're looking at Bitcoin in fiat terms, um, there's so much noise and it's so scary. It's there, it's designed to make you fearful, right? And so you have to like fight that fear. And once you understand that the fear comes from the noise of the fiat world and the way that like the fiat world measures Bitcoin, you can just kind of sit with that fear and be like, okay, I know this is here. I know the fear is alive and present and everybody feels that, but it's like it's being done to us. It's not like it's something that's coming from me. Like I don't have fear that's like organically growing inside of me. It's being like implanted into my system by the system that's like in a death rattle. you know? And it's like at the end of its life, just like trying to fucking get its like greasy neon claws like into you to try and like not die as quickly as it's going to die. So it's going to like pull that fear and like, pull that out of you or implant it into you, I should say. Um, and so it is this really challenging thing. And I'm still in that back and forth process of finding the signal through the noise. And for me, one of the things that is the most helpful in finding the signal is just understanding that like I can still measure my percentage of the energy network that I'm involved in. And then like, what if Bitcoin dies? Well, like Bitcoin is an idea, like the cat's out of the bag. People understand that source code protocol now and like how to create a really good, almost perfect monetary ledger that then people can use and transact in. And like the internet's out of the bag, the way that we can all like communicate, like that's only getting stronger and stronger. There's going to always be a decentralized way for people to communicate with each other. So like understanding that like cat's out of the bag on the money side, cat's out of the bag on the internet side, and there will always be a way to make it work so you can operate as much of a sovereign individual person and live within decentralized networks where there's high signal, and then always being aware that like the noise and the fear of the centralized systems are always going to be coming at you. And the more that you can just like make peace that just like that's not my fear to hold, that's the fear of a system that wants to control me. um yeah, and so just separating out the signal from the noise, I think, is the biggest thing that I kind of like latch onto every day.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. And for me now, like where I'm at, it's kind of just like water off a duck's back, Like you gain discernment to all the bullshit, and life can be so simple, and everyone drastically overcomplicates it. I mean, particularly in the West, like the natives, they're just chilling. Um, but like, you like right now, I'm in a position where my salary's in Bitcoin. And this week, the Bitcoin price has dropped like 30, 40% or something, in the last like week or two. And then I'm just like seeing my savings account kind of go down in terms of dollars. But then I'm just like, man, my next paycheck's going to be good.
Yeah, because your income from the company is still on the unit of account, which is US dollars, right?
Yeah. It's like I'm in fire sale mode. I'm like, oh, I'm getting paid a double salary this week.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Yeah. And that's a good point because I think that like until you're able to go fully onto a Bitcoin standard, which is like you don't have a Canadian or Australian or US fiat bank account anymore. Um, you don't have any investments that are denominated within fiat in like a registered account. Until you can like fully get away from that, that like system's gonna like the egregore of that system is like it's there, it's looming over you, it's trying to pull you back in, and it's trying to like instill fear into you. um, and so that's my ultimate goal is to fully be on a Bitcoin standard. I don't know how that looks of like living in Canada long term. It's probably not very realistic to do that unless things drastically change here. There's very small like micro movements going on of people like small shops, accepting Bitcoin, but it is pretty spread out and sparse. And I don't think that the federal government here is going to be very favorable to private property ownership in the coming years here. So that leads to some hard decisions that need to be made. But I know that's where the signal is, and I know that's where you find true calm and peace is just being on a Bitcoin standard, right? Right. That's it. So like, you got to get there. You got to struggle your way out of it.
Yeah, you got to make some pretty drastic changes to like also bring it to life. Like that's a huge piece of why I'm in Costa Rica. Is the ability to use Bitcoin here is unbelievable compared to something like Canada. And if you want to vote for like freedom and sovereignty, the vote now is never left or right in the election. It's with your feet, and that's why I'm here.
Eat with your energy. I think like, to radically change a country like Canada or Australia overnight, if enough people realized what was going on within the monetary networks and just said, nah, you know what? Like, I don't I don't believe in this. I don't like the way that the government is constantly devaluing the currency and like pissing our money away. I'm just going to take my money out and put it into Bitcoin. You would see things change very quickly. Right? Because that's everyone voting every day. It's like not once every 3 years or 4 years or like once every year for your provincial government or whatever it is. That's like a everyday vote or an every paycheck vote. Call it 2 weeks when people get paid. They say, I'm taking my extra economic energy and I'm taking it out of the system. That would just shit would change so fast, right? People don't understand that like that is the highest form of voting is you saying like what you're doing with your energy, right? That's all we are. It's like everyone's just energetic beings running around, transferring energy, harnessing it, storing it. And so if you completely change the dynamic of that, society moves with it because that's the base layer of society is the energy network and how we all interact with each other.
Yeah, and I think that's how we see like basically everything unfold, where the vote that you have is with your energy and it is with your dollar, even though the dollar's kind of fucked. But we're talking about like organic food, right? The organic food is always more expensive than the like commercially grown stuff, but people are willing to pay that, therefore it incentivizes that market to grow. It's always the vote with the dollar. It's never the vote for the politician.
Yeah. But yeah, like the vote with the energy, we just use the dollar, right? But like when you give someone dollars or you give someone Bitcoin, all you're doing is you're just saying like, hey, I have this stored energy and I want to give it to you because you provide something valuable to me. That is the highest form of voting. The rest of the shit actually doesn't even matter that much, you know? So yeah, vote with your, and I remember thinking about that. I always had that philosophy from like a young age. It was like voting with your dollars or voting with your money is very important. But it's just funny how long it took me to question what money is. Cause I was like, that's the best way of voting. Like vote with your dollars. And I remember always like the politicians I like would like talk about that. And I'd be like, I fucking like that guy. He gets it. But like he didn't get it. And I didn't get it. Cause we didn't know what the fuck we were talking about. We didn't ask the question, but wait, what is money?
Uh-huh. Yeah. And like when we're looking at truth, it's a very tricky thing. I remember when I was going deep down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, they started getting Jordan Peterson like on podcast talking about it, and he was learning, and the way he acquired the information was like pretty spectacular, like just how quickly things clicked for him. But one of the things he said was, I understand why you guys are doing this, and I understand that this is probably the best way forward, but the consequences that this is going to create, you have no fucking idea, you know? And I feel like when we look at what Bitcoin does to the world, there is going to be a lot of purging to some degree that happens, and shit's going to get weird, like crazy weird, because now we're talking about currencies that to some degree hold their value because they can maintain their borders in a country. And now we're talking about the dissolution of borders because there's no need for the currencies in the certain areas. So there's a good chance I think we're going to start to see, like, maybe in the next 100 years, this purging, this removal of the parasite or cancer that is fiat dollars. But in that is going to create potentially like a Mad Max kind of situation where shit just gets crazy. But I also know and trust that it's the right move. So if I do end up playing a part in the creation of a new world that had to go through some serious growing pains, I'm also still here for it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a risk. And I think like for people to hit on that and understand, like they're pointing right to the source of the problem. When they say, like, when someone like Jordan Peterson says that, like, I understand why you guys are doing this and why you're supporting this, but you have no idea the chaos it's going to unleash. That tells me that, like, from a very smart guy, he understands that, like, this is the biggest problem. And if you tear down this system, it will fucking make everything collapse. And like, yeah, a lot of Bitcoiners are like, yeah, that's what we're here for. Like, we finally figured out what the problem was
And the solution.
and the solution. And it's going to be messy, you know? And it's like, I don't know how that's going to all play out. But the dissolution of like borders and nation states, like I don't think that will ever happen because that was still very much alive and well on a gold standard. Um, so just moving back to like some sort of sound money standard within nation states, like it doesn't really mean that there'll be like a dissolution of borders in my mind. Because I still believe that like different ethnicities and cultures will want to like maintain what they have within their country and like control their resources and then like trade, but they'll just be operating off of a different monetary standard. And like it's kind of crazy to think that there's like 200 fiat currencies in the world. Like it actually makes no sense when you think about that, and how they're all like pinned to the US dollar, and then like the US dollar gets devalued and then everybody has to devalue their currency to like keep up with the devaluation. Like it's a really strange system. And the only reason that it exists is because of central banking and control of the fiat currency, and like to cause as much price confusion or like uh, unit bias as possible. Then yeah, why wouldn't you have 200 different denominations of the same currency within the whole world, right? It's ways to control other nations as well, right? So like uh, if you can rapidly devalue another nation's currency and destabilize their government to move in and monopolize and steal all their resources, because you have so much more economic power than they do and you know how their like shitty fiat currency works, you can just go in and just like completely rape and pillage whatever nation you want, right? So like if every nation was backed on Bitcoin or gold or something scarce and valuable, it'd be a lot harder for like economic powers to come in and do that to different nations.
Yeah, take a look at what's happened through Central America and even South America since the 80s, and how, the IMF and CIA and everything have got involved to literally just collapse economies. It's kind of terrifying, it actually is. And it's something that you have to look at, you actually have to look at that. Um, but I'd almost push back a little bit. I'm curious where this rabbit hole goes, where we talk about the on a gold standard, everything still worked to some degree. And when we look at when we're on a gold standard, there was still the pound and there was the franc and there was the whatever the Dutch currency was. And how they worked within themselves was the gold pound was zero point 0.6 ounces and the franc was zero point 0.8 ounces. And the conversion rate between them was just the disparity between how much gold was actually in the coin. But the coins will only be able to be used within those nations. And although
They're redeemable. Yeah.
you could smelt them down and transfer the currency sort of as like the average person, that's still how they maintained their economies to be somewhat closed. And obviously violence was a huge piece of that too. But when we look at Bitcoin, there's nothing that's like separating the general individual from going into a country and living off a Bitcoin standard and no one really knowing that they're there, or do you know what I mean?
Okay, so I've thought about this a few times and I haven't done the full thought process on it, but as Bitcoiners, we talk a lot about, like the World Economic Forum and like BlackRock, right? And like all these massive globalist institutions that are trying to control the world and like basically dissolve borders. Like they want full control, right? So like if that theory is true that Bitcoin is going to like make everything irrelevant, then wouldn't that be the greatest tool for like a globalist takeover from that standpoint?
But they can't manipulate it.
I know they can't manipulate it, but like if we're talking about if fiat goes away and we have Bitcoin and borders go away and nation states go away, isn't that what the globalists want to happen?
And you own nothing because you just sit on Bitcoin.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I don't know, man. Like that's an interesting thought, right? Of just like, isn't that the goal of what we know from? But like, they don't control the currency, so I guess that's where maybe that's the new world. That's a whole different thing that comes out of that is if you don't have control over the economic power and the decentralized monetary units are within the hands of like every individual. Um, and they don't need your economic power. They don't need your like fiat IMF loans. They can just like go about their business and operate their lives independently. I guess they have no control over you. It's like the boot is off the neck, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly. There's like a complete separation there. And then also, like Bitcoin itself is like, you can go and I think it's Jason Larry talks about this, the change of power, that someone has gold, right, in their homes and they're somewhat sovereign because of that. The violence to go into that area and to take their gold is plausible, right? And now when we're talking about Bitcoin, you need someone's seed phrase. You can't just go and get it. And the wallet itself is the vault. So not only do we create a currency that's basically impossible to be taxed because it's voluntary at that point, you can't really go and get it either, unless you're going to just mass torture populations, which I think is still on the table. I hate to say it, you know, but it's very interesting. But I think once you take the control away from being able to inflate and to give loans and all of this, like you give someone a loan of Bitcoin and you're like, you got to pay it back over this amount of time with this interest rate. Like people can step in right now and the government can be like, you're not paying your mortgage, whatever, or the bank can step in and be like, we're taking the house. Whereas no one can really get the Bitcoin off you unless they torture you. So there's like a whole other layer of defense as the individual.
oh, yeah, and like a lot of people think that the story from 1933 where um, the U.S. made gold illegal to hold as just like an individual, and they forced everybody to like hand in their gold. And like there's a lot of rumors around that are like, oh yeah, they took all the gold back. It's like they actually only got about like 15% of it. Like most people were like, fuck you, I'm not telling you where it's buried. Like, and so the amount of force, it's like to like they're gonna get some of it. There will be things that happen that are pretty nasty, of like a totalitarian force coming in when it's in like its final stages and it's trying to get as much control as possible. There will be some like horrible things that happen, but they can't do it to everyone, right? Like it's too much force, it's too much energy. Like they do not have that amount of energy to like take everything. So then like it will survive, it will go on. Um yeah.
I think there will be a point though where we'll see a switch happen in terms of how the governments are looking at Bitcoin. Now they're all kind of like, yeah, pro Bitcoin, this, that. And part of it's to like entrain the subconscious of people about digital money and then the bringing in of a central bank digital currency, a CBDC, to garner that control. And they're using the security of Bitcoin as a way to manipulate the people into being like, this is the way forward, except we control it. Because then we know what's better for the people.
It's a custody battle. This is what this is what I realized when we were down at the Bitcoin conference in Vegas. Never been to a big Bitcoin conference before. And I was blown away by the amount of like fiat mindsets going on and like guys in suits running around that didn't seem to know anything about Bitcoin that were telling you how much they loved it. And I was like, oh, okay. This is the decentralized versus centralization battle. That's where we're at right now in Bitcoin. And so it's like, no, you guys can own Bitcoin, but like you just got to keep it in this wallet, right? And you got to keep it on like this exchange, or we're going to hold it for you in this account, or we're going to create this ETF and like we'll buy the Bitcoin for you. Like we'll be we're the adults here. Like we're the money guys. We're the pros. We've been doing this forever. Trust us. Like, come on, like don't worry. You got all the security. Like if it gets lost, we'll pay you back. You got insurance. Like it's fine. Just trust us and we'll hold the assets for you. Like that's where we're at right now is like, so a lot of people in 2023, 2024 that now like own Bitcoin don't. They either have it on an exchange, but most of them have it in a Bitcoin ETF, right? Which is just like an exchange traded fund that's listed on the stock market and they hold Bitcoin on your behalf. So like everybody that thinks like so I think and then like it's almost like the government saying like, okay, we know we can't stop this thing. Like it is a force that has like become so much bigger than like we've tried to, shut it down numerous times and every single time it's failed. So like we might as well just become the holders and like get as much of the custodian share of the pie as possible. While telling you that like it's really hard, you're not going to be able to figure this shit out. And it actually is kind of complicated, right? Like operating and using your own Bitcoin and holding your own private keys and running a node and like learning how to use the Lightning Network. Like it's not hard once you figure it out, but there is a learning curve. And most people don't even look at their fucking credit card statements ever, right? Like they don't think about their money. They're just running around tapping their cards and their income comes in. They don't even know how much they're getting paid every month. They have a general idea, but like they don't want to think about money. And that's where I think like the psyops can come in, right? And like it's easy to get a lot of people that don't ever want to think about their economic energy or their money to just hand over power to another custodian constantly and never understand that like that's where the source of all the problems in the system are coming from is that like nobody wants to take responsibility for their energy. And it's the biggest thing that we can do to free ourselves is everybody's just got to do a little bit of fucking work and be like, all right, I want to hold my own energy. I need to hold my own keys. What does that mean? How do I do it? Boom, boom, boom. Put 2, 3 months of work in, like learn it. It's all out there. There's tons of good resources. And then you do it and then you feel more empowered. You feel more in control. And then everything just like spirals out from each individual person and all of that like energy of in like holy shit, I feel like I've taken the shackles off a little bit, and then that ripples out into society and off we go.
Yeah, and I think what you're bringing at like a good point here is like with the ETFs and all this exposure to Bitcoin, but it's not actually holding your own Bitcoin and your own keys. And what we're seeing now is the fiat layer on top of Bitcoin, and it will lead to the exact same thing that the fiat layer of gold led to. where it'll come a point where they're over leveraged. The exchanges are over leveraged. A run on the bank is ready at any point in time. And then again, it'll be like another mass purge. And then it's back to the Bitcoin standard, hold your own keys, you know? And you bring up a really good point about responsibility. And I want to dive into it, but I just got one extra thought I want to throw on top. And just like kind of, building on what I was saying about the subconscious programming around digital currencies and the push towards CBDCs. And I feel like once that happens, there's going to be like, why would you hold Bitcoin when you can own Fedcoin? And there's going to be this big Fedcoin rollout. And we'll see a lot of people basically on board into that system. And there's so much control at that level that at any point in time, they can basically shut off the on and off rails to Bitcoin. And I think we'll see a moment when CBDCs are implemented and they need to start getting rid of the Bitcoin and like the psyops against Bitcoin to take back the power so they can use their side of things. And we'll see Bitcoin become the terrorists of the future. And they're going to be, the way that they go after all sorts of resources in the world, they're going to be dropping predator missiles on Bitcoin miners in Paraguay
Yeah, it's fucking right.
to maintain their little slice of the pie that they like. If they lose, they die, And when we talk about governments and centralized control, as soon as they don't have the fuel, they can't do the things. If we live on a Bitcoin standard and tax becomes voluntary because you can't force it out of people, how do you maintain the military? And all these things start to slip out of control, and centralized parties have no skin in the game. So they don't really have any reason to like make logical choices as much as sway public opinion, you know? And they don't live without us as individuals supplying them with their energy. In my view, they are a parasite. They only live as the bloodsucker on the individual of the population.
So that's back to like the Peterson thing. Is that what he's talking about? Is like if everything becomes voluntary, then how does any nation state run any sort of forceful operation? Force has to die, right? If there's no like if everything is voluntary, then like control and centralized force, it's like because if they don't create anything, if they don't actually produce anything productively, they don't have their own energy because all of their energy is parasitic and is given to them through force and coercion. But then force, but like, so is that a good thing that like all of those? It's like I guess that all of the centralized forces that operate off of force and coercion go away.
Yeah. And I think it brings us back to a very weird place, which I think is kind of a beautiful place. But there's always been hierarchy in humanity in the way that we construct tribes and cultures, Like that's not going away. There's people that I look at and I'm like, you are a better leader in this situation than I am. What do you want me to do? Right. And I think what we'll see is this massive centralized nation state type of centralized power actually start to break down where it'll become less federal, more provincial, more state, and then even then it'll break down towards like councils and municipalities and things. And then very quickly you're like kind of at a tribal level of 150 people where I look in my neighborhood and I'm like, there's a pothole there, the pothole probably needs to be filled. So we go sit down with the 50 people around us and we all chip in the money to fix the pothole. And we're solving problems exactly as they're arising and to the degree at which we deem them necessary versus this artificial centralized vision of if we build a bridge here for $10 billion, it might improve the economy by 10%.
Yeah.
We would build the bridge if we needed the bridge. Stop fucking playing these mind games of maybe, you know? And then everything gets very small very quickly. And like you're tending to your garden. Like as an individual, the only thing you can really do is tend to your garden. And if your garden is beautiful, other people look at you and they're like, wow, how did you make such a beautiful, inner, peaceful garden? And it's like, oh, this is kind of how I did it, you know? But now it's like, it comes back to the true place of like community. And it's like, the community is my garden, the family is my garden. It stretches out, but only to a certain level, you know? And I remember hearing, who was it? I can't remember, on a podcast now. And he was saying the thing with the way we think about political structures, it's like me as an individual in my immediate family, I'm a communist, right? And, and then as we stretch out to the community, I'm a socialist. And then as we stretch out to the provincial or the regional kind of area, I'm a capitalist. And then once we're talking federal, I'm a straight up fucking anarchist. Why can someone on the other side of the country tell me if I need to fix a pothole on my street or not?
Right.
And then life gets extremely efficient and economies get extremely efficient, you know?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's because like, that was a great rant, and I think, like, just as we before getting into that, thinking about that, like, if there is no monopoly on force and theft and coercion, um, it doesn't change the fact that, like, the natural state of human beings is wanting to live in peace, right? Like, we will figure out a way. Because when people are like, well, if everything's voluntary, like, who's going to build the roads? Who's going to like run the hospitals? Are we going to have a police force? Like, it's like, yes, we want all those things. Like, everybody wants safety and peace. And like, just because there is no governing body that's operating above us that runs on theft and force, like, doesn't mean we wouldn't figure that out. Like, of course we figured it out. I'm sure that there's like countless times in history in places that have operated like that that figured it out without some sort of like daddy above us that is just like going to infinitely steal as much energy as they want because they know best for society. And yeah, the pothole on like 5,000 kilometers away on the other side of the country, they're going to force someone to, you know, fill it, or force someone to put in some sort of like, you know, ridiculous bureaucratic process that's going to like make that filling of that pothole cost 50 times more than what it actually needs to be done when it just needed to be like, three guys and a fucking shovel. Just for knocking it out, right? Like highly efficient.
How many times have you like gone through downtown in any city and there's like 11 dudes standing around while one guy's working and it's like all this fucking union bureaucracy bullshit, you know? It's insane. It's insane. And I think when we look at it, it's like, of course, that's how we're meant to live, is more on this like smaller community scale because it's so efficient. And we look at, why has communism never worked? And when you have a centralized party, it has to process the amount of information of everyone's free will within the system and be better than it to understand what's going to happen in the future. So you take Russia, right? And when it was the USSR, communist country. Okay. It's a centralized force that is telling everyone what to do and how to live within the system. How many nails do you make in a year? Like, how the fuck could you ever work that out?
You couldn't project that. Yeah.
Because COVID could rock around and everyone's like, oh, fuck, I'm home all the time. I may as well just like reno my house, and then you just have a spike of like 10,000% of nails necessary, and like that's what the free market is. It's like, it's live feedback of, does this economically make sense? If it doesn't, things collapse. And we look in Australia, right? And we have the big four banks, right? And it's like the big four banks, like we're secure because the government upholds the big four banks, right? Which is insane. It's like they can make whatever mistake they wanted, but they'll be upheld.
And then they're incentivized to make a really big mistake, which we've seen happen, right? Which was what 2008 was all about. Is like, once a centralized institution has that get out of jail free card and they know that like they will be backed up by the government, which is really just the people, all the people that hold the currency and pay taxes. It's not the government. It's all the people that work within that country.
Yeah, you're the one upholding the big four banks.
Exactly. So it's like, then it's like, what a nasty incentive structure to put into a system, right? So of course there's going to be people within that incentive structure that are like, "No, we'll cook the books a little bit. We'll take some unnecessary risks here." Because like, what is risk when there's no consequence? Risk goes away, right? And then all there is upside if you're playing in that system and you're a controller of that. So that's a really dangerous thing to say. And that's happened in Canada as well, where like, you know, the big four banks, there's six, but there's the big four that are too big to fail, right? What a crazy thing to tell society. Hey, all these banks here, they're too big to fail. It's like, the fuck does that mean? Too big to fail by who's the am I too big to fail? Like, I can fail. Like, everybody can fail. Like, what do you mean too big to fail? That means like there's no risk. Therefore, how do you run a company with no risk? You do really corrupt shit.
For sure. And you take massive risks and you just fuck everyone along the way because there's no consequences to your actions.
Exactly. So there is no risk.
Yeah. And I think that's why we see governments taking on AI in such an intense way. I saw recently, what country was it?
Albania.
Yeah, they have like an AI politician now. And I think part of that is like it makes perfect sense that they're pushing in that direction because when we're looking at a centralized party of how many people are in like the government who are making legislation and stuff, 250 to the 35 million who are in Canada, they only have 250 computing power to try and understand the 35 million computing power of the population. Of course, they're going to make drastic mistakes, and with AI they're trying to equal it out, but sorry buddy, like free will is real and you will never work that out. You will never work out the free market of how people want to navigate their lives.
No. The free market changes every day, right? And that's to tie that back into Bitcoin, it's the only free market that we have, which is why it looks so chaotic, right? From a fiat price perspective. It's like, yes, it's constantly shifting. It's like it's moving based on the emotional reactions of every human being in the world, right? 8 billion of us, if that's really the number. But everybody operating within like a truly decentralized network that's a fixed unit of supply. We're chaotic, like human beings are chaotic. We get up and we do different shit every day and we feel differently about things and we change our minds and we want to like move here, buy a new house or like start a new job, start a new business. So it's like it is a chaotic thing. Like life is chaos. And that shows up within the Bitcoin price movement. It's just like, yeah, this is the metric of like how fucking crazy we all are. Like, is that necessarily a bad thing? How much of the craziness comes from the system itself? Uh, but yeah, I think that the craziness, like the chaotic craziness, would die down uh, of people adopting a Bitcoin standard because it smooths out the time preference and you move from high time to low time, which I think is a good circle back on that.
Yeah. And it also like naturally, if you look at the population of humanity as like a body of some kind, when these banks that are too big to fail, they become like a cancer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's like no wonder society is sick when there's literally cancer living here. And Bitcoin seems to have this ability to like remove the cancer, you know, and like just clean everything up. And then we go back to like entrepreneurship and providing value in like the truest form on the free market. And businesses are meant to fail. Like if the idea is not good, fail. Like, please, that's what keeps everything in balance.
Hmm. And the amount of businesses that are allowed to continue to operate, this isn't just like a big business problem. There's medium businesses that also run into this problem. And it's because there's so much like fiat money sloshing around the system, right? So, like, if you were someone that like built a business for 5 years and maybe you were cooking the books and you started to like siphon a bunch of money out of the business. But there is an infinite amount of investors out there with a lot of dumb money. What are the chances that because they acquire that money in whatever way, because there's so much money sloshing around the system and there's so many people with these like arbitrary, ridiculous units of measurement called fiat currency. What are the odds within that system that you're going to be able to find some idiot and convince them that your company's doing great and that they should give you more money to continue to run your Ponzi scheme? It literally happens all the time. I was just hanging out with a friend last night that like works for a business that she's like a founder and startup in, and that's like what the dude is doing. And it's like he's raising that money to like get through the next level of his scam. Right? It's like he's like stop paying people within the business. He's like cut salaries. He's like doing all this like crook shit within the people in the business. But like on the outside, it's like he's still presenting forward as like this is a great thing. And so like he's gonna find some dumb money because there's like too much dumb money out there because it's all fake and was all created from nothing. And it's like, so he's going to find someone that he's going to be able to maybe eventually it'll fail, but it allows Ponzi's to run for way longer than they should, right? Because they just keep finding zombie money, and you just like keep the fucking chaos and it just steals, like it just kills people. Something that should die within a year dies within 20 years. That's 20 years of carnage and chaos that like has been inflicted on like everyday people because there's too much bullshit fake money sloshing around in the system.
There's not too much fake money. There's infinite fake
Yes.
money.
That's right.
Like that is the thing. There's infinite. There's infinite. Like the entire earth is in 100 times more debt than it has. Like, come on. How the fuck did we get here?
Yeah. And I think that loops back to like it's such a big problem. Like when you say something like the earth is in $300 trillion worth of debt, you're just like, what the fuck? How do you fix that? How do you unwind that? You know? Um, so yeah, like yes, it'll be chaos. But like, what's the alternative?
It's gonna fail. It's gonna fail eventually. It's like we can kick the can down the road a little longer and like put it onto our children or our grandchildren, but like, fuck, I would rather just cop it and let them live a better life.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. Someone's gonna have to like, foot the bill. And it's not like footing the bill as in like paying back the interest. It's like a societal reset. That's the footing of the bill within a fiat economy. Because like the young people are just like, again, it just like comes back to like apathy versus hope, right? Like if there is no hope to create a good financial future or like a safe space for your life or your family or your friends, then everybody moves into apathy and nihilism. And then what happens? What happens when you have a whole generation of people coming up where all there is apathy and nihilism? That's the end game, right? Because then people are just like, then they won't fucking listen to anyone. Because why would you listen to anyone if like there's no future? And then, like, that's end times. That's like, you can't run the Ponzi anymore because you can't sell anything to anyone because they don't have any fucking money because they don't give a shit. They're not gonna, like, buy your lies anymore. And then what? So, we'll probably see that, but I think that's usually how these cycles end is with, um, a generational revolution, um, that just says, "I'm not listening anymore because, like, there's no reason for me to because I believe in nothing."
Yeah. And like once you become a Bitcoiner, like a real Bitcoiner, you have no excuse to be a coward anymore, and kick that can down the road for your children and grandchildren. Like you have to foot that bill. I'm here to foot the bill. What a fucking coward. If you learn this and you understand this and you understand the direction that life is heading in and you choose to play small and kick the can down the road, you're just a coward. Like, the thing is, I don't know if Bitcoin is perfect. As far as I can tell, it's perfect, but I don't know if it's perfect.
Yeah. There's a degree of faith involved.
There's a degree of faith in absolutely. And but you you have to stand and die on a hill. And this is the closest thing to it. I will stand and die on this hill. And if it all just fucking goes to zero, then so be it. But I'm betting that fiat's going to zero.
Yeah. Oh, fiat's going to infinite. That we know for sure, right? Which, depending on which way you look at it, is 0, right? I guess it all ends up in the same place. If something can go to infinite, then what value does it have? So maybe, the infinite value is the 0 value.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah. I remember talking to my buddy, and he's recently become a Bitcoiner. And he was explaining Bitcoin to one of his friends, and his friends were like, "Yeah, well, I watched this YouTube video explaining like how currency works, and like at the nation state, the value of the currency is based on how easily it is to be taxed."
Huh.
And I was like, "Wait a second. You're telling me that you think a currency has value based on how easy it is to be taken away?
Yeah.
You have lost your damn mind."
Wait, where did he get that from?
He was just watching some, Keynesian economic bullshit, magic money tree, something or other. But that it makes sense because you look at a country like the US and it's printing all this money, so it's creating money supply, and then the only way to maintain it from going into hyperinflation is to tax the shit out of its people so that they can cull some of the money supply that they printed.
Yeah. That's part of it. A big part of it too is because the US dollar is the, global fiat reserve unit, that they just export their dollars all over the world, right, in the form of treasuries. So, like, that's the other side of, like, having um, a fiat currency be, like, the global reserve, currency, is that it doesn't make sense anymore to make anything within your country. Your main export is your dollar, right? Because you hold the thing that's everybody else is pegged to, and you have the strongest currency. So that's why China became, the world's factory, because the US dollar was too strong, and no one's going to pay US dollars to make anything when it's like the king currency because it's the strongest one. So you go to different countries with weaker currencies, especially countries that have, maybe some sketchy laws around like labor rights and slavery. That's prime for wanting to like make everything in the world, right? So then like all of the industry in Western countries start to shut down because their currencies are too strong. So it's like, well, why? Who does this benefit, right? Like, I guess yeah, it benefits us being able to be over here in the West and get like cheap shit from Amazon made that's not going to last, and has to be changed out every 2 years. I guess that keeps the fiat Ponzi scheme going. But if you zoom out on that, like it's all short term games, and it's not really benefiting any individual person to have that. So it would make more sense to weaken all currencies against something that is fixed and finite, and back countries with that thing, which would be moving back to a gold standard or moving to a Bitcoin standard. Because then that's the thing that's most valuable, not your dollar. When your dollar is the thing that's most valuable, then like your country can't do anything, right? You can't make anything. You can't produce anything. It all has to be exported elsewhere. And then what do you have?
You have a society that's completely based on buying shit.
Exactly.
That's it. That's the entire economy. It's just buying. It's actually not creating any value. It's like siphoning value. Yeah, which is just the total fucking inverse.
Yep. And then inflation is the slow leak from society, right? So like if there's 3 or 5 or 10% a year being siphoned out, then you can measure out how long that society has to survive, right? It's like you've put an endpoint on that society. And if you say like, you hear it from federal governments and central banks all the time, our inflation target is 2%. It's like, well, all that means is like you're just going to siphon the energy out of this society at 2% until there's like nothing left to take. Because you can only take so much. It's like, well, we're going to outrun inflation. It's like, no, you're not. there's always going to be inflation. You've never said it's the goal is to be zero. The goal's never going to be zero.
It should be negative.
Always be it should be negative because then there would be an abundance, right? Which is what we should be working towards. Like everything that we do as humans should be working towards like abundance energy, abundant food systems, like abundant health. Uh, but it doesn't. It's always on the extraction side. So you can only extract so much, like until things die. You can't just steal life force forever. Doesn't work that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, man. 100%. Okay, just I just want to throw this in here, right? Because once you once you sort of get into Bitcoin, it's so easy to fall down the crypto shitcoin rabbit hole. And basically every Bitcoiner has done it, unless they were just unbelievably focused.
Yeah, the only ones I know that did it are the ones who like came from a gold and silver background and they never got into stocks. So they did that for a while. They always felt like stocks were a scam. And like if you feel like stocks are a scam, it's really easy to see the scam of crypto.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, like when they're the same, they're the same. I understood the stock market from shitcoin trading, and just looking at how it's like all the people who are like day trading shitcoins. It's like you buy the rumor and you sell the news, you know, and it's like, oh, okay, it has nothing to do with what this thing's actually valued at all. And you're basically just stealing from someone else because you heard the rumor before they did, and we look at something like Tesla as a stock and you go, okay, Tesla is worth so much. How many cars do they sell? Are they really bigger than every car company in the entire world combined because they're selling that many cars? Fuck no, right? It's all like media and hype and all of this, and it has nothing to do with the actual business. So the stocks and cryptos are the same in that kind of idea. Could you just kind of riff on shitcoins, crypto, uh, as to why it's not the way?
Yeah, so I mean, just to lightly touch on the stocks thing, there used to be this metric. Some people still go off of it, which doesn't make any sense anymore, called price to earnings ratio within the stock market, right? So that's gone. That like some of the price to earnings ratios of the companies just like are so inflated and so crazy when you look at like the magnificent seven companies where you're just like, okay, the biggest companies in the world that are publicly traded have completely detached from any sort of reality of like you said, production output versus like price and value, that like that's no longer a thing. So there was a time when it made sense, but I think since like quantitative easing kicked in and like trillions and trillions of dollars just started getting created and sloshing around the system, that like that game's over. So there is no truth anymore within like publicly traded companies. And it really is just like a handful of companies that like control the entire stock market. I think it's like 60 or 70% of the value of the S&P 500 is held within like the top 10 or 20 companies, something ridiculous like that. So it's like, what is the S&P? Why is it 500? Um, doesn't make any sense anymore. So um, why crypto is not the way, I think like you just have to bring it back to first principles energy if you want to think in this way. And I recommend everybody going through this thought process of money as energy and time in abstracted form. And so if you just want to save money, what is the best money? And then you have to go through that whole thought process of just like it's something that is um, it's a ledger that is immutable, that has scarcity, that is verifiable, and that there is no permission from me to send it from to you or to anybody else. So as long as I can do that, then I have good money. And then you can go to the crypto market and go through all of those things. So like I guess the next one down would be people like looking at Ethereum. Um, Lynn Alden talks about this in Broken Money. She talks about Ethereum and like how Ethereum was started. There was a pre-mine of Ethereum, and I think like 70% of the coins went to like the founders or the designers of the Ethereum blockchain. So it's largely held by the people that created the system that are still alive and around, and then they get together when there's a problem with an Ethereum, and then they change the protocol. And they've done this numerous amounts of times. So it's like, oh, there's a boardroom here, and there's like an executive roundtable, and they're deciding the future of this monetary network. Um, and then in 2002 or 2021, they made the big error of moving away from proof of work to proof of stake. So they used to have the same um, mining protocol that Bitcoin operates of, which is proof of work, which means you have to put energy into the network, right? So it's like you can't just create it from nothing. When you want to mine new coins, there has to be an energy transfer. So it's tied to the real world of energy and physics. When Ethereum moved away from proof of work to proof of stake, it just centralized the power back into the biggest holders, because now it's like, to verify the transactions, the transaction fees get kicked back to the people that are holding the token, right? And so you get a percentage. So it's like, we've created a yield. You just have to stake your Ethereum with us, and we'll give you interest, which is usury, right? And you can go down that whole rabbit hole of like interest and usury, and where a lot of the problems of um, underlying money comes from, and how it always centralizes too much control of money into the hands of a few people. They did that. So if you had a pre-mine and you owned 70% of the tokens, and then you flipped your protocol to proof of stake, and now the people that hold the most currency get the highest amount of yield from holding that currency, and that gets kicked back to them for their transaction fees. That sounds like a corrupt system to me. So I'm like, I don't want to be a part of that. I want to just own the best money, right? Um, so and then, as far as like going the further you go down the crypto rabbit hole, like I don't actually know a ton about the other cryptos, but they fail on those points of money. So it's like, just understand what you're getting yourself into. Most people that are in crypto, they're not thinking about holding XRP for 20 or 30 years. They're like, no, I'm going to get into it right now because I heard it's going to $100 next year. And then I'm going to trade it back out. And then the question you always have to ask yourself is like, trade it for what? Like, what are you selling your thing back into? And if your plan is to sell it someday, do you even want it? Right? Like, do you want this thing? Like, can it buy you what you need? Or do you have to transfer it back out into something else to then buy the thing you need? And that's what a lot of crypto and investing in stocks are, is you always have to exit the thing back into something else and then purchase it. Where like good money, you just hold the money and then you exchange that money directly for the value or the goods that you need in your life. And that's where I think Bitcoin hits on that. Um, just operating as money. And so I will say one last thing about the three characteristics of money that's, I think, really important for people to think about. So store of value, medium of exchange, and then unit of account. Measure the things that you want to own against those three things and see where they fall short. And then ask yourself, you know, what is important to own? Like those three pillars are extremely important when it comes to money. And if the thing that you hold fails on any one of those, then you should really rethink about owning that thing.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people as well who are like in the crypto space who they know Bitcoin is the thing, and they're just like, well, I'm just gonna try and get a little bit more fucking money here by gambling on the shit coins, and then I'll buy the Bitcoin, right? And basically what you're saying is I want to provide no value to the universe. I want to stake this and basically steal all this money from someone else, because I was a first mover versus actually creating any form of value. And that also you don't care about the cryptocurrency and you don't care about any of them. And they're like projects, but they don't actually do anything. You know what I mean? It's all just the hype train as well. And if everyone has that thought process, then at some point they will all collapse and then there will be only Bitcoin. So why not just hold the thing now, which is even like earlier, and just watch it go up and just be patient?
Exactly. I think where people run into problems on that is boredom. Um, you know, gambling's a hell of a drug. And especially for young men, like this is a thing. Like we love to gamble and it's being forced on us constantly, right? Like what is everybody from my like everybody in the United States and Canada, the first thing you do when you turn 21 is you go to Vegas, right? Because it's like I gotta go and try and, like, win it big and, like, play the tables, like, "I gotta go to Vegas," like, that's the best, so it's, like, ingrained into us to be, like, a degenerate gambler from a young age, and I think there's something about just, like, the male ego and testosterone that, like, fucking loves that game, you know? We love the, like, hunt of, like, trying to make a big, quick win because it gives us, like, a lot like, just a huge rush of, like, dopamine, and it just when you hit that win, it's like such a good feeling, but it's so fleeting and short term that like you have to keep going back and just like hitting that over and over and over again. And crypto does that to people. It is just like the biggest form of like degenerate gambling that I think I've ever seen. And that's why I got pulled into it is because I was a degenerate gambler. And it was just like right there, perfect for me. So I think like, yeah, if you understand that you're in a casino and you can just like be honest with yourself and just admit that like, oh, this is a casino I'm walking into. I'm not here. I'm not going to try and confuse myself that I'm like getting into some really organic, good for the world upstart project and we're all going to get like really wealthy together and then we'll buy the Bitcoin. Like that's where the logic falls apart, right? If it's a really good, amazing project and it's really good and valuable for the world, then you would just hold that thing forever. You wouldn't need to buy the Bitcoin. So if you even have that thought where you're like, I'm just going to get into this thing and like it aligns with my ethics and values because I'm a good person and I like this project and we're going to make a lot of money and then like transfer it into a different kind of money. Question your thought process and your logic on that one.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Yeah, 100%. You may be going down the wrong path. Just
Yeah.
just throwing that out there.
Yeah, the path might be right in front of you and you're, trying to do some mental gymnastics to like take the long way. And it will for the most people, it will end up being the long way. Like you're
It's always the long way. That's what it is. It's always the long way, you know? And as someone who's like, I've lived a certain life and I've made the decisions to make the life that I have. And, I spent the last 7 years not focusing on my career, but focusing on myself and my evolution and traveling the world and all of these things. And for the amount that I understand Bitcoin, I probably don't own as much as I probably should. But I don't care because I know that Bitcoin's going to be there forever and I know that it's going to continue performing amazingly into the future. And I will just take my little piece day by day and there's no rush. Price goes up, damn, price goes down, yay. It's like I'm just chugging along day by day.
and the reason why you don't think you have enough Bitcoin or as much Bitcoin as you should is because all of those lessons along the way of like finding the path to understanding energy as money, those are like the energy leaks that get pulled out of you that are the big lessons. And like you got to listen. You have to listen to when those things happen in your life because it happens to everybody. And there's a lot of like guilt and shame. Oh, I wasted money on this. I lost money on this investment. But they're all lessons. And if you don't get, and this is why I love the casino reference. If you don't get that you're in the fucking casino and that the house always wins and everything is very cleverly designed to steal from you, if you just can't acknowledge that, then you'll never be able to leave the casino. You're just going to be that fucking old dude at the table that's just like beat down, twice divorced, doesn't talk to his kids anymore. And it's like because he can't leave the fucking casino. It's like you got to get out. You got to leave this the extractive energy leak system at some point and just move to the one that's like true and pristine and actually holding your energy for you without it just puking all over the floor.
Talking about puking all over the floor. So, as someone who has been walking the plant medicine path for a while, but more recently entered the wonderful world of ayahuasca, uh, do you see any similarities between ayahuasca and the plant medicine path and Bitcoin?
Yeah, I'm really grateful that I did this work of understanding energy and money before I went into ayahuasca. And yeah, just to be transparent and clear, I've only done one ceremony, 4-day ceremony. So, uh, very, very new into the world. I'm excited to continue down the path and sit with medicine again for multiple more times over the course of my life. But there was this feeling when I entered, when the medicine started to kick in, and there was this like overwhelming gratitude and appreciation that I did the work to understand energy and how like energy operates within nature and how the money should be a best representation of nature and energy. And it was just, it really helped me like get through the experience to um to truly understand like I'm kind of rambling, losing my thought train here a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one, and like for me, I think what you were saying then, like just at the end of like your last rant, there's there's something about like plugging the holes in your bucket, about the way that we make money, but then also the way that we have to plug the holes in our own bullshit. There's so much energy loss, and I feel like the medicine really helps align us with our own bullshit and all the places that we're lying to ourselves and all the places that we're cheating ourselves and other people, you know? And then to just like realign with that idea of like freedom and sovereignty at like every level, you know? And I look at the the ayahuasca community and the plant medicine community, and they're all tapped in to like the the matrix and the bullshit that's around us, you know? And they come to ceremony and they're like, I feel so good. I feel so clean. I just like want to be a better person, all this stuff. And then they go back to their 9 to 5 that they fucking hate and they feed the machine that they fucking hate.
Right.
And then all the Bitcoiners are like storing up the energy and they're like feeling good about the future and what they're doing. But they're just full of their own bullshit of how they're falling short in their own lives and don't even realize it, in the ways that like they navigate their relationships and their businesses and all this thing. Cause it's like, I got to get the Bitcoin, you know?
Yeah. Right.
And I feel like the two of them together create this balance where the internal world is aligned with like freedom and sovereignty. And then your external world is aligned with freedom and sovereignty, you know? And if there's people listening who are like on the plant medicine path, you fucking need Bitcoin. And if you're a Bitcoiner, you probably need the medicine as well to actually do the Bitcoin justice. In if we create a new kind of culture and economy and all of these things to be an actual fucking human being.
Right. Yeah, full alignment between the internal and the external world and how you integrate and operate between both of them. Yeah, one thing I would say that I experienced in ayahuasca was like feeling my body. It was very like somatic experience for me. I actually didn't puke over the 4 days, but I did purge out the other way quite a bit. um, but it was this like this intelligence and knowledge coming in and like feeling this electrical currency vibration move throughout my body and understanding that like how intelligent my body is, and I have no idea what it's doing, but there is like an unbelievable amount of intelligence there and it wants to be as efficient and productive as possible. Like that is its natural state, right? Is to just be this like perfect machine that just like when I want to move my hands, like I don't think about anything. Like I don't think about my heart beating. I don't think about like my calf muscle like moving. When I play sports, it just like does shit, right? With very little thought. And so it is this like perfect mechanism and like so much appreciation for the meat suit that I'm like my consciousness has been like implanted into and how it just like navigates the world around it with no real like forceful function, it feels like. And so in the experience it was just like a deep sense of love and appreciation for this like magnificent machine that we've been imported into. Right. um and so I think, but I don't know, like a lot of like self-love and appreciation comes from that. So like healing the inner world. And then, yeah, when you come back out and you realize that like your body is this perfect machine that wants to be happy and healthy and efficient and productive, and that is its natural default state. What system do you want to like align yourself with that mirrors that? And the closest thing I can find to that, I think, is Bitcoin, right? So, like, I agree that connecting those two worlds and like having one without the other um, could be a little untethering because they do seem to like just fit together like this perfect puzzle piece.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think you see, like, I kind of just see it in the way that some of the Bitcoiners navigate. And there's this idea of like being based, you know, but like a lot of it actually is like from a position of hate, you know, like I'm based, fuck this person, fuck them, fuck their ideas, you know. And then along with that, it's like all the fucking Bitcoiners are carnivore too, you know, which creates even more of that energy of like, fuck them. I'm like, you're like in that instinctual energy, you know? And it's like, okay, these people are going to be the ones who shape the future. And that's the leadership, you know? That's who we trust, you know, the massive economic change of hands that's happening, you know? It's kind of it's a hard one for me to reckon with sometimes because they're just so fucking full of hate.
So, are you talking about Bitcoiners that you know personally, or are you talking about like the talking figureheads that we see on the internet?
I would say the talking figureheads more so. I don't usually hang out with people that are fucking like that, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's interesting because I don't like I don't think the internet's a real place. Um, I don't get me wrong, I listen to a ton of podcasts of people that I think are like very real humans. I think they're down to earth. I think they get it. They're running their podcast because they want to like share ideas. They're not into it for any sort of like nefarious motivations. But 90% of the internet is people that are being incentivized by a corrupted system, right? So, like, if you are spewing out hate or division, it creates more rage bait. Therefore, it gets you higher clicks. So, like, you're like, you did that once, and you're like, man, maybe I should turn up the hate. You know, that was a pretty good. Like, that video got to like 1 million views pretty fucking quick because I was like talking some shit. And so, like, I just don't think that's real. I don't think that that has an impact because like I see a ton of hate and division and chaos on the internet, but then when I step outside and I like talk to people that I work with, or like I go, you know, play hockey with my friends or go spearfishing, like everyone's like super reasonable. You know, like I just have all these like very reasonable, rational people around me that can like engage in open thought and dialogue and like see the nuance in subjects and like not have to like take a side and be hateful or be vengeful. So I'm just like, I don't, and maybe that's just the bubble that I'm in. And like you said, it's just like you choose to surround yourself with like-minded, good people. Um, but I'm just very aware that like, the people that I see, the big voices that I see are playing a fucking game and they're incentivized by a corrupted incentive structure. Yeah. And I don't know if they're gonna be the ones that inherit the earth, like, I don't think you don't fucking win with that kinda attitude, like, there if you are spewing hate or division, like, you're part of, like, the fiat, that death rattle, like, you're on your way out as well. That shit's not gonna last. No one's making it through that fucking lifespan.
And that's where Bitcoin, I think, is so beautiful in its core, where you feel this like energy of, you know, the control that's like coming against you. And you're like, oh, do I riot? Do I do this? Do I do that? Do I fight? All this kind of stuff. And in reality, you just hold Bitcoin. You know, that's like all you have to do.
Yeah.
And it just makes everything way more peaceful, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I've been learning about the like non-aggression principle quite a bit, and Satoshi specifically talks about it like many times in the white paper. And it's just that like this will be a system where like force and coercion cannot exist because the incentives are directly against force and coercion. And so like the second that force or coercion would to enter the system, it would inherently destroy it. And therefore it is like can't survive. It's like coming into this environment where like it immediately gets squashed out. Um, and I think that's a really interesting thing to think about in life is like being a part of systems and networks where there is a strong non-aggression principle. Uh, and so within Bitcoin, there's a lot of people that can be very forceful about like, oh, you need to have this thing. Like, and I do agree that like people do need Bitcoin, but um, you don't have to. You don't have to do it. It's an open door, but like you don't have to walk through it. And I think that's an interesting thing with uh, plant medicine is like the door's there for you. Like, here's the medicine, here's the mushrooms, like whatever it is. Do you want to take them? If not, that's okay. You don't have to walk through the door, but like you might find something pretty cool on the other side of that door. And so like come in and then like you can come in, hang out in here, like step through the doorway, come spend some time in here. And guess what? You can leave whenever you want as well. Right? Completely like no force, right? It's just like, what was that?
Kind of.
Kind of, I guess. Yeah, you don't really like it's true. You don't leave, but, like, what I mean by that is, like, just because you drink ayahuasca or sit with, mushrooms in a ceremony, it's like, it doesn't mean you have to start, like, dressing differently, become a fucking shaman, like, do all this shit and like start speaking very spiritually and like join a fucking cult, like whatever it is. It's like you don't have to do anything, right? It's going to change you. Of course it's going to change you. But like there is no like you don't walk in and then you're like placed on this distinct path that you have to follow. It's literally just like you come in and you explore. And if you don't want to explore anymore, like you don't have to. You can like leave, you can come and go. And that those principles lie within Bitcoin as well. It's like I can come in, nobody has to ask my permission. I don't have to ask anybody else's permission to like buy this money or use this money or transfer it to someone else. I can come, I can do it, and then I can leave. And there's no gatekeepers. Like there's nobody standing anywhere that's going to be like, well, hold on a second. I don't think you can leave now that you're in. It's like that would be a fucking controlled, centralized cult. And I don't want to be a part of those.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I think, hey, just to like finish up, it's been such a good conversation so far. It's epic. Um, what's kind of like your plan or your philosophy of like what you're gonna do over the next sort of 5, 10 years? Like, obviously, you know, nothing comes to fruition as we think it may, but just like the direction that you're heading in as an ayahuasca drinker and a Bitcoiner entrepreneur. Like, how do you see the next part of your life kind of unfolding?
Yeah, I mean, I've never really thought seriously about having children, and that's starting to become a larger thing that's been coming up in the past couple of years. Uh, so that's something. That's a big life shift, as someone being like, I don't think I really need to do it. To now this kind of creeping, like, no, I think I need to do it. Right? Like, what else would I be doing? So thinking about, going into my 40s and 50s without starting a family is starting to feel like something that I don't necessarily want to do. Um, so that's a big one. That's a big shift, and that's pretty new. That's a new feeling. Um, aside from that, uh, aligning community and thought with more and more people that are open and curious to like play in kind of the gray area of the world. And the two really most fun gray areas that I've played in are Bitcoin and uh, psychedelic medicine, plant medicine. Just like endless curiosity within those two networks, right? To explore. Um, and so, where is that? Like there's a lot of great people here on the West Coast in Vancouver Island, but Um, I don't know if I feel like super connected to this place. I don't have any family here. Um, they're all kind of spread around in different places. So I think what I'm saying is like 5, 10 years. I don't know. A lot of shit's changed in the last like 2 or 3 years. When you start really shaking things up with understanding how energy networks in the world works, and then combining that with uh, plant medicine. So very much in a state of flux, but I think there'll be some big moves in the next couple years, like physical big moves of where I choose to live, and me and my girlfriend choose to like live and start a family. Um, and then that new place will be dictated upon, is that tribe there? Like, are those people there that we can all get together and like, you know, be in close physical contact with each other and share ideas and build things together, um, and just play in that like curiosity of life. So stay tuned.
Mhm. I'm here for it. I can't wait to see it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like what you brought up with children is like a really interesting one because both Bitcoin and ayahuasca seem to just fill you with hope, you know? And I think a lot of people, like a lot of my friends, especially back in Sydney, having children is like almost not even on the table because money's so tight, you know? And because to some degree, like they don't see the future as a beautiful place and they don't even really want to bring children into it, you know? And I feel like it's a very natural thing that once you start to find the Bitcoin signal and ayahuasca and all this hope for the future, that you're like, let's do it, you know? Let's bring him in. Let's start the next generation. And also, one thing I've realized is like turning people into Jedi's is fucking hard. I feel like I could just make them.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Tried to orange pill enough people. Fuck. Yeah, let's just create one from scratch. Yeah.
And then what's that leverage like when I create one and then they create a whole bunch of other ones? 5 of me is gonna do a way better job than 1 of me.
Yeah, hell yeah. That's great. I think one thing I've personally experienced that I've had to, question a lot in my life is just like, and this comes back to like having kids. We've been indoctrinated to think that like the world is going to be gone in 5 years, 10 years, right? There's going to be this like catastrophic event, whether that's from man-made climate change or something other. And like that's a huge reason why a lot of people say they don't want to have kids, is they think there's this impending doom. And then again, you just got to question, like, where does that come from? Who's telling us that? What are their motivations, um, to put us into a state of like fear? Because when you're highly fearful, you're easily controllable, right? So, and to just understand that, like, I don't know, like the whole fucking world could be underwater in 10 years, or, there could be like massive fires that just like wipe out an entire country, or the sea levels rise from various reasons. Like, it's completely out of my fucking control. So, like, why would I base any of my future decisions on that? Right. Um, but I think people can kind of like use that as a bit of a um, escape valve for like a really big, scary life event, which is having children. Right. It's like if the world's telling you like, "Don't worry, it's gonna be gone in 10 years anyways," you're like, "Oh, perfect. I was like way too scared to have kids anyways. So like, thanks for giving me a good reason." You know? So I think it's a cop out, but I'm healing from that massive psyop that's been going on. Psyops on top of psyops on top of psyops.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful, man.
Hell yeah. Love talking to you, dude.
Yeah, man. Me too. That was epic. Epic, you know. I knew it was gonna go good and it went great. So you know, I hope the listeners enjoyed that one. If you're, you know, not into Bitcoin, look into Bitcoin.
Yeah. I would say a really great, if you're just kind of like looking to peek in and understand, there's just so many places you can start within Bitcoin. So one of my favorite videos to show people as their first intro, if they've never really thought about money, it's a great little, I think it's like a 20-minute YouTube video. It's called What's the Problem? The guy's name is Brian something. Can't remember, but just type in "What's the Problem" on YouTube. And that will just help you wrap your mind around like the problem of the current financial system, because Bitcoin isn't going to mean anything to you until you understand why we need something like Bitcoin. So first things first, understand the problem, read the books that tell you the history of the problem of money. And then once you understand that, it's much easier to wrap your mind around something like Bitcoin.
Mhm. Yeah. All right. I think that's it.
All right, wrap it up.
All my relations.
Yeah, appreciate you, man.
Thanks so much for tuning in. I really hope you enjoyed the show. If you did enjoy the show, don't forget to like and subscribe below. It really helps a growing channel like this out. And click up here. It'll take you to a collection of the best this podcast has to offer.